Kitty cat. What are you up to, Isabella? Is that your new hiding place? Huh? You like that fold-up clothes hamper that I use for laundry. You like it in there, don't you? Yeah. Hi, YouTube fans. It's Matt of Post April 6th YouTube channel. What this vlog is going to be about is about me. It's a timeline. And I cannot read the whole thing from start to finish because talking about 52 years of time and reading from start to finish, it's going to be really a long one. So what I will do is I will start with the date I was born and keep reading until about 28 to 30 minutes of time has been taken effect. So why don't I just go ahead and get started? Okay. July 13th, 4:29 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I was born 5 weeks premature after my mother bravely endured a C-section giving a birth. And the fact that I weighed at least 9.8 pounds at St. Joseph's Hospital, as my father, age 28 at the time, was working harder than ever to manage and do hard work let me rephrase that, hard diesel mechanic work, as the co-founder of Associated Diesel Service Incorporated, a 3 to 4 man operation at that time. And the business was started in January or February of 1973. January of 1975, I suffered a collarbone. Oh goodness, let me say that again. I suffered a fractured collarbone near my right shoulder, meaning it was this side. After crawling out of a baby crib and really screaming a nail-biting baby cry that woke both of my parents up, and I was taken to an emergency room. Late August of 1978, I entered Cantrell Elementary, Douglas County Public Schools, and became a kindergartner and began to receive special education teaching from a teacher named Miss Miller. October 31st, 1980, I celebrated Halloween at a neighbor's house in Surrey Ridge, Castle Rock. Surrey Ridge is a subdivision. And then my parents drove me to a second party I attended with Ann and Sean Brazel in England, because Sean was about 4 to 5 years older than me. He's over 55 now, and Anne was about my age, meaning she's about 52 years old now, or 51. Early June of 1981, my mother was released from the hospital after recovering from open heart surgery and other coronary care treatment for a 6-week period of being hospitalized. Winter of 1983, I was diagnosed with chickenpox and had to stay home from school for 3 to 4 days. Then, after resuming school after 3 to 4 days, I was sick for 2 more days. Several teachers felt I was not fully healed. Late March of 1983, I took a trip with my sister to Lemon Grove, California, and stayed with my grandparents Muriel and Rich Richardson at their nice home located on the 2000 block of El Prado Avenue. Because Lemon Grove's in San Diego County, it's a different part of San Diego Metro. Early June of 1984, I got treatment at a new allergist. After the treatment neared the end, the allergy tests, I went into anaphylactic shock. No, I'm not joking, it was that bad. And I had to get an immediate adrenaline shot. February of 1985, my parents could not sell the house in Surrey Ridge for $120,000 and moved to Acres Green and rented a home for only $650 a month and lived in a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, bi-level house on Mimas Place. Mimas Place is the street, near County Line Road. On April 7th, 1985, after my dad waking me up on a Saturday morning, I went with him to the 1400 block of 38th Street in northern Denver to spend the day with him at Associated Diesel Service for the last time. The business closed down for good and the building was sold. For I better not say my dad's really going to be upset. And 2 months later, my dad was hired at Stewart and Stevenson Power as a journeyman master diesel mechanic in early June of 1985. Memorial Day weekend of 1985, I did some target shooting at a location in the rural part of Smoky Hill, Aurora, with a good friend of my dad's named Frank, a George Kennedy lookalike, and 2 other men. We all had too much fun. Late May of 1986, my lengthy tenure at Castle Rock Elementary let me read this again. Late May of 1986, my lengthy tenure at Castle Rock Elementary came to an end, and I was excused from school a few days before the last day so I could attend a family reunion and graduation with my cousin Gary, now age 56. He would become a student at Baylor University in the sovereign state of Texas. The first week of September 1986, I did my first day of school at Castle Rock Junior High and had 2 interesting electives: remedial reading and home economics for the first semester. On the second semester, I had an introductory shop class and self-understanding, because those are 2 different types of classes. The self-understanding class, I had to tolerate a nasty girl who treated a lot of people in nasty, slanderous manners. With the way she treated people. Mid-August of 1987, my mother informed me she was divorcing my father, and we were going to live together at a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment on Arapahoe and Holly. Shortly after obtaining an apartment at Arapahoe Village Apartments, I was enrolled at Newton Middle School, Littleton Public Schools, And by the Christmas of 1987, I began getting obsessed listening to Jimi Hendrix. I bought his circa 1989 release of Jimi Hendrix Smash Hits. This would be a cassette tape around Christmas time. In April of 1988, a nasty bully kid named Chris Douglas threatened me and wanted to do a violent beating on to me. Mom and I paid a visit to the assistant principal, and the assistant principal assured me that she was going to get with him and give him a very serious warning. Because after that meeting with the principal, this kid stopped pushing me around. He stopped talking to me, he totally ignored me. He was already in pretty big trouble, ditching school, and he was loitering around the outside of the building during class time and doing some things he was really not supposed to do. May of 1988, the divorce between my dad and my mother became final. And my mom got a, well, I'm not going to say, but it was several $1,000s financial settlement in lump sum from a savings account that my father had at Central Bank. And Central Bank is now part of U.S. Bank, mega corporation, as well as a legally binding divorce decree which required my father to pay child support and alimony in the amount of $750 a month. Late August of 1988, I changed schools again and became a student at Arapahoe High School. A week after my first day, my mother broke her back at a jitterbug dance with a new boyfriend, and she had to be in a hospital for 2 to 3 weeks. While my mother was in the hospital, I stayed in a large home in Oak Hills. Oak Hills is a subdivision, part of Castle Rock, with Kurt and Janine. They did a lot to help me out. November 5th, 1988, a few days before the famous presidential election, and 5 days after Halloween, my dad knocked on the door of apartment 307, and I answered the door knowing it was going to be my father. And my dad looked way different. The full beard he had for 15 years was totally shaved off, and he was barely recognizable. I was quite surprised. June 19th of 1989, I began orientation with Arapahoe Youth Employment. I did summer school 1/2 of the day, and I worked at Sinclair Middle School of Englewood 2 weeks later. My boss was a major pipe smoker. I'll just call him Larry, because that's his name. And a great guy too. But when needed to be, he could get really damn tough. That guy was not ever afraid. He was a former Marine, and he fought in the Vietnam War. And he was a big guy. He's about 6'2", 6'3", and he's pretty muscular. I mean, he's a guy who wasn't, a biker gangster, but, when he was at a bar and somebody started a fight, he wasn't afraid to fight back. Oh yeah. He wasn't afraid at all. Unless it was like 6 guys that were like 6'6" and a lot more muscular than him. Then you get a little bit scared, but not super scared. Okay, back to the thing. Back to my timeline. The first week of August 1989, Arapahoe youth employment ended, and I enjoyed some summer vacation. And 10 to 14 days later, I got hired as a dishwasher at El Pollo Asado restaurant. December 1989, I was fired by Calvin Lee at El Pollo Asado. He felt it was just not the job for me. Oh well, that place sucked and I didn't mind being fired. Because I didn't, you know. January of 1990, I began hanging out with a guy, I'm not going to say his last name. His name is James, or he went by Jay. And that guy was a bad influence. I began ditching school too much. And by the end of the 1990 school year, I was nearly expelled due to the fact I ditched school over 158 individual class periods. And I would later be enrolled in Tab Alternative School. June of 1991. My mother's health got worse and she was having bad chest pain. And her eyes were treated for retina damage because she had the surgery to her eyes, or laser surgery or whatever they did to cure retina damage. And I stopped being friends with James. That guy was hated by a lot of Arapahoe High School, and a couple of Arapahoe High School classmates suspected he was a disturbed closet homosexual. Because that may not be true about him, but with the way he acted towards men sometimes, that might have actually been true about him. Mid-June to early August of 1991, I was in Arapahoe Youth Employment Program again, and I did some more summer schooling classes, and for the second half of the day, and for the first half of the day I worked. And I worked as a custodian apprentice at Goodson Recreation Center. In mid-August of 1991, my mother wakes me up because she was about to be driven by a friend to St. Joseph's Hospital again. She had a heart attack. Yes, she did. I was frustrated and upset to deal with this. August 25th, 1991, and this is probably the saddest day of my life because what I'm about to tell you is true. On August 25th, 1991, the worst day of my life. At 11:14 a.m., my mother was pronounced dead. It was very unsightly to see her. I cried a lot. Even me and my father hugged each other and cried. After we left the hospital, I went to go live with my father at his house located in Expo Park. And we lived in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. I better not say the street name because if my father were to see this, he'd get very upset. I'll tell you this much though. It was about a few blocks away from Havana and East Kentucky. I'll tell you that much. December 8th, I got hired at Johnny's Diner of Aurora. I did all sorts of crew member work. Mid-January of 1992, me and my dad plus several of his friends moved from the house that I just mentioned to a larger home on East 11th Avenue in Racine in Hoppin Heights neighborhood of Aurora. Mid-spring of 1992, my dad wakes me up crying because a lovable dog, a purebred Schnauzer named Freeway, had just died. Yeah, I didn't see him die, but my father wakes up because he could hear him really scratching really hard at the carpet. And he was laying down, and he was like gasping for air. What I suspect happened with Freeway was he had a major heart attack, or he had a bad stroke. Or he might have had what happened to me, even though he didn't bleed from his ears. Cerebral hemorrhage, or cerebral aneurysm. Yeah, Freeway was old when he died. He was at least 14 years old. It was his time to go. He wasn't feeling good, and he couldn't hear too well. June of 1992, my days of spending half a day of school at AVS Restaurant Arts Cooking School and 1 hour at the alternative program, and the second half of the day at the Arapahoe High School ended. The TAB program was going to be dissolved, and boy did I like that things were going that way. July of 1992, a good friend of my dad's, who was a security guard at a, I'll go ahead and say it, Denver Country Club, brought over a new female pet cat, a bluish-gray Chartreux cat. Me and my dad agreed to name her Squeaky. And a week or so later, I took a Greyhound bus to Montrose, Colorado to celebrate my 19th birthday with my loving grandparents, Rich and Muriel. From late August of 1992 to January of 1993, I resumed learning at Arapahoe High School. During the first semester, I was at AVS Restaurant Arts, and then the rest of the day I was at Arapahoe High School. During the second semester, I was full-time at Arapahoe High School. May 27th, 1993, I became a high school graduate, and I was handed my high school diploma at the class of 1993 graduation ceremony. My dad was cheering, he really was. September 18th, 1993, I walked out of Johnny's Diner. I quit because I could not stand the owner's assistant manager. That guy was a nasty, foul-mouthed loser. I mean, he was. He was always cussing, and he was always bringing up some scatological things to ask people personal questions that a manager should never ever ask. I mean, he was really a jerk. I don't miss him. November 1993. Because I wrote November, I put down November 1993 because I can't remember the exact date verbatim. Okay, it was. I do remember this much though. It was a few days after Veterans Day holiday in November. Okay, so let me explain what occurred that was in my favor. I got hired at Video City video rental store. I worked as a cashier and a crew member. I was fired on December 26, 1993. The owner was a nasty, shrewd jerk. He really was. On February 11th, I was hired at Subway Sandwiches, DU, University of Denver area. I worked there until August of 1994. While it was something else to work there, I remember hearing about Kurt Cobain's suicide and O.J. Simpson being charged with murder during my 6-month stint of working there until I resigned. Labor Day of 1994. I worked at Lord & Taylor department stores as a housekeeping associate. I did that until October 26th, 1994, and I got fired for a reason that was stupid. Because the manager there was really a pushy jerk. He really was. November 18th, 1984, I got hired at Taco Bell of South Glen Mall. Ugh. I never really liked that job. On March 29th, 1995, I moved out on my own into a 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 525 square foot apartment on 13th Avenue and Columbine Street of Denver, paying only $335 a month. Because back then, there wasn't a lot of livable apartments that were that cheap, but there were a few back in 1995. Not now, more like $1,335 or higher. May 21st, 1995. I was the usher at my father's wedding where he married his second wife, a woman who is the same age as the late Jimi Hendrix, and she was also a registered nurse for 45 years, until the early 2000s. Note, the wife and my dad had been in love since the spring of 1992. They had a serious relationship. September 1995, I quit Taco Bell due to being hired at Auntie Anne's Pretzels for a couple of months, and I took on other things, including working at FOLEY'S department stores in South Glen Mall as an early morning stock clerk. April of 1996, I got hired at TJ Maxx in the stock crew and changed jobs in June of 1996, and I worked at Michael's Arts and Crafts as a cashier and a crew member. Late July of 1996 to late August of 1996. I was hired at Dependable Cleaners of Cherry Creek as a customer service counter help, and I resigned from FOLEY'S department stores in late August of 1996. Because see, the reason I resigned was because Park Meadows Mall had just been built, and a lot of people were worried that the store was going to shut down, or people were going to be laid off. Okay, one more. November 5th, 1996. I voted for the first time in my life. I voted at the presidential election for Bob Dole, Jack Kemp. I was really disappointed Senator Dole didn't win. Well, life does get more interesting, and I would like to talk more about what went on, but I will have to do that in another vlog. So thank you everyone for listening, and goodbye.